Un momento, por favor. I'll just do this. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jim.
Hola. I'm Jim. I'm speaking in English. Sorry. I was a music director of a touring Cirque du Soleil show for 15 years. And then I was a music director of a permanent show, of a show that's just in one place for 5 years in Dubai. And before that, I was a music director of, I was a normal music director. I conducted an orchestra. I ran the bands of people much more famous than me, because I'm not famous. But they needed that. Those are normal music director jobs. Yeah, but a Cirque du Soleil music director is a completely different animal. So I'll tell you all about this. Okay, to understand what the job is, it helps to understand the history of how it developed. Okay, so in the beginning, Cirque du Soleil is a circus, of course, with a lot of theatrical elements. They had a strong theater director involved in the beginning. They had no animals. They had a band that was pretty much a rock band, and it was pretty loud, and they had rock lighting. They were trying to come up with something brand new. And, I mean, they were obvious about it. The very first show was called We Reinvent the Circus. So, in the beginning, let me see. It was still a circus. There would be a trapeze act, and then there would be a clown act, let's say. Okay, and the band would play a song that goes with the trapeze act, and then the band would play a song that goes with the clown act, and it would either be a song, there could be a singer, or it was just an instrumental. And in between these two acts, there would be another song that they called a transition. So it was basically play a song, play the transition, play the song with the act, play the transition. And when the company started, there was just a group of people that were creating these shows. And so there was one composer who created the first bunch of shows. And what he would write was, he would write like a normal song that fit the act, fit the mood of the act. And it would be standard intro, verse, chorus, solo. Let's say a saxophone solo. The saxophone solo would be not a definite length. The person doing the trapeze would take as long as they needed to do the trapeze. When they were about to finish, the band leader would say, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and dun 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 dun. And that was the only flexible part. Okay, and so it went like this for a few shows. The composer didn't really care about making the music line up with the act so much. He was composing a rock song. To him, it was a rock concert with a circus happening in front. Eventually, there was a band leader who was very good, very creative. He became a composer. And so the two of them composed a couple of shows together. Okay, I lose my train of thought when this is going on. So this other composer, they finally gave him his own show, which is the show I did. I didn't create the show. I joined after the first 4 years. Okay, so his concept was highlight everything. When the person does a trick, if they're doing it like a Diabolo, he wanted all this music to line up just everything. And okay, before that, the band had started using percussion loops. They started to use sequencers to just because Cirque du Soleil likes to push the technology as much as possible. So they were basically just playing along with a drum loop. That's all it really was. It was very easy. When you get to the end of the trapeze, it's very easy to turn the drum loop off. When this new composer, by the time he took over, he wanted to use strings and accordion, and they had started to use that a little.
Work with strings, you said?
Anything. It was a sequencer. A sequencer is a keyboard that you can program and save MIDI notes. And the MIDI information, it's all it is MIDI information. It then, when you turn it on and you can run the sequence back, it will activate the sounds. It's not a recording, it's just MIDI information. And they were doing very simple, just a drum loop and just let it go. And then the band's music was complex, but the sequence wasn't. So by the time they were going to create the show I did, you have a new composer. You also have the music director. This was his first show. And this guy was a genius with MIDI information. So what they wanted to do was basically compose a song, but have it be where you could chop it up into little bits and activate, trigger, they would call it, trigger each little bit. The technology didn't exist. The music director, this genius guy, was building a program to do it when the Roland keyboard company, the Roland Music Company, came up with that system. It was called real-time phrase sequencing. It was the RPS system.
Until Roland,
RPS,
you said?
RPS. It's
RPS,
real-time phrase sequencing.
Claro, salió con la tecnología RPS, Real Time Phrase Sequencing, que sería, claro, secuenciamiento de frases en tiempo real.
Because before that, you could have done that. You could have broken it up into sequences, but you couldn't load all those sequences and just have them all be ready. So now with the new... okay, so these two guys, the composer and this music director, they went nuts with this. So they created a show that followed everything. In the show, there were more than 100 triggers, and they were everywhere. They were just assigned to different keys. It was, learning this thing was nuts. But it was, so the way it was done, there were two keyboards that were identical. You could load one song at a time with maybe 20, I think it was maybe 99 sequences, but the most was 20 that any song had. You loaded the song with a floppy disk, and yeah, it was still floppy disks, and it was still floppy disks up until 2010.
Yeah.
And okay, so you have the two keyboards. The top one would be the sequencer, right? You would trigger the different sequences and play the bottom one. Okay, in the middle of the song, you would stop playing for about 10 seconds, load the next song onto the bottom one, and when the next song started, now the bottom one was the sequencer, and you played the top. And but on the fly, you didn't have to change the discs. One disc would hold. The show had an intermission, so there was Act 1 and Act 2. One disc would hold Act 1, would hold one act. So you just put the floppy in, you were good. You had to keep loading every song, but you didn't have to keep popping. You didn't have to have 20. Yeah. You didn't need all these discs. And so when you turned it, you hit a button and it turned into a sequencer. There was one button, one key assigned that would do all the program changes, right? So all the sounds would change because this thing had its internal sounds. We had a bank of samplers and synthesizer modules. Hit one note, all the sounds changed. You were ready to go. Okay, so this system then lasted for a lot of shows. This became the standard way to do it, although no show was ever as complex as this one.
Técnicamente.
This was the last show of the original team, so a lot of things changed after this show, and a lot of people consider it the best thing Cirque ever did, but it's partly everybody put their hearts into it, so created. But for the poor band leader, it was nuts. Okay, and so over time, this is now sort of pulling out of the music. Over time, the company became very successful, and a sort of corporate structure really evolved. It was no longer the original people. They would now hire. It was outsource would be the term. They would just bring in somebody, hire them, pay them to create the show, and that person wouldn't own the show. It was a new contract. It was a new model, which does change how things evolve from then on. Okay, so fast forward up to 2010. Interestingly enough, in Santiago is where this started. There were three main shows that they had going, three old shows. These shows had hit every city in the world, every big city, because they would go into a city, a major city, set up the tent, offices, the kitchen, a school, backstage for the artists. It was a huge thing to set up, and it took them a week and a half to take it down and move to the next city. So in order to keep going with these shows, to squeeze some more life and some money out of them, they wanted to go to smaller cities. You can't take a week and a half to set up a tent and then only play for 1 week. But a small city will only have enough people interested that you can stay for a week. So they came up with a new model going into arenas where they would just go in. There's no tent, there's no school, there's no kitchen, in and out. And so my show in 2010, we were in Santiago, we did 2 more cities, we did Lima, we did Bogota, and then they closed the show down for about 3 months and replaced everything, partly because it just wasn't built to be set up and taken down in 2 days, because now it was play a city, Sunday night, pack it up, be ready to go by Tuesday in another city. There was no way that, even if you got rid of the tent, there's no way the way the stage was designed could be set up. So they had to build a whole new stage, so they just replaced everything.
Hacerlo todo, to replace everything. Hacerlo todo de nuevo de otra manera.
So, I'm in Santiago when this starts to happen, falling in love with my wife. I don't want to take any time to do this, but this man shows up, this guy my age shows up from Montreal, who's another one of those MIDI genius types. Jim,
Está acá en Santiago y conoce.
So, Jim, how are we going to... We're going to get rid of all your equipment, and we're going to make it all on computer.
Jim, nos vamos a deshacer de todo tu equipamiento, de todas tus maquinitas y lo vamos a hacer en el computador.
You can still play a keyboard, but the RPS system is gone. We can't replace those keyboards anymore. The keyboards are 15 years old. It's dangerous to be touring with a keyboard you can't replace. How do we want to do it? And he had good ideas, which was, so the plan was the keyboard that I played, keyboards, we sampled those sounds, meaning he had a program that would it would generate each note maybe 10 times. We would set how many velocities we needed. He would sample every note. We took all those samples and put them in Contact 5.
Yeah,
Contact 4. This was Contact 4. It's a computer-based sampler, basically. The bigger problem was the RPS system, what to do with that. He had the idea of using Ableton Live, which isn't designed to do this, but he had the idea that this would work. So what he explained to me seemed possible. It seemed like the two of us could actually make this work, because he knew how the program worked. I didn't know anything about it. I knew it was very clear what I needed. It wasn't like a creative kind of thing. I needed it to do just duplicate what I had. So because I knew what I wanted and he knew what it could do, we figured that this was going to work. So we recorded every sequence. We just turned them into audio files. Every sequence, every track, because MIDI files have 16 channels. So for every sequence, every 100 sequences, we recorded it maybe 16 times, because to break it up into separate tracks.
Dice que
While I'm in Santiago trying to fall in love, it's like, this is not working.
Claro, dice que
So it actually worked.
Y
It
funcionó.
became this way of running sequences with Ableton with pre-recorded tracks now becomes the way it's done, and it's still done today. And we recorded everything. We recorded the click, because you play along with a click track,
Dice
because
que
we had a box that was generating 2 click sounds. One was a hi-hat,
un click de un hi-hat,
which everybody listened to,
Que todos
except the
escuchaban.
drummer, because he's playing it. So he had a cowbell, a donk, donk, donk. I listened to both. I panned them left and right, because it sounded cool. So I recorded the click as well. So now everything was in audio files. And after we finished these 3 cities of Lima and Bogota, the show closed down. I went to Montreal and sat there for a month, just figuring out, how am I going to make this work? And the reason I'm telling you this is because what this guy and I came up with is now the standard for how the show runs. So if you want to be a Cirque du Soleil music director, you have to do 2 things. You have to know how this program works. You really got to be on top of the program. The other part is, because I did it with nobody telling me how to do it, that became the standard. So now it's even part of the audition process. They will send you audio files, and as you can, they have a casting department. You go. They will send you stuff, so you can make a video or make whatever they want as part of your audition process. So the last band leader, music director audition package I saw, it was, here's a bunch of audio files. Here's what you need to design. We need for example, a song that goes, but we need to be able to repeat or loop a section, and we need to be able to get out. There was some sort of problem. Do it. And they don't even give out Ableton. They expect you to own Ableton, which is what, $400 or so, 4 million pesos, something like that. But unfortunately then, this has become the standard that you can just figure it out. And because the company's so big and can draw talent from all over the world, they get away with it. So they will find somebody who can figure it out. But there's no school of how to do this. But honestly, the whole company has evolved this way. Every show is different. It's a normal thing. I had a band leader visit me in Dubai. The first thing, how are you doing it? How are you doing it? And we compared like how we had come up with building our own way of doing the show. And his was pretty close to mine. So I think the model I came up with, which did change everything, because I got rid of this dumb system, and put it on one and just went next, next, next. And if it had to be not the next because something had happened, then nowhere was over here. It was here, and then it would go back so next would still work. He's using the same system, and I think it's become the standard. So I'll show you this program. I could show you this for like a whole day, what this program can do. Okay, this is the show in Dubai. It's not the Quidam, the older one, because I got to create the show in Dubai from the beginning. So I really got to set this up the way I wanted it to go. So it's a better representation of what this program can do. Okay, it's this big. Wait. It's all that. It's all that, and wait for it.
Todo eso así de grande.
It's also all. Okay, that is not the whole show. Here's the end. This is the end of the show. Here.
Ese es el final del show. De ahí arriba hasta ahí y hacia allá es todo lo que es el show.
Okay, so let me show it to you in action.
Se los va a mostrar en acción.
I'll explain a little. This thing here is where the titles normally go, the titles of the songs.
Ahí es donde van los títulos de la
This
canción.
first column, I didn't do that. What I did was I just wrote in whatever was changing in the show. Like the second one, Pearl hits water. That's because the pearl hits the water.
Dice
Okay.
claro que el título, lo que
And
él
then-
pone en el título es exactamente lo que va a ocurrir. Dice,
And then-
Pearl hits the water, la perla golpea el agua, es porque la perla golpea
Yeah,
el
and
agua.
then birds come out.
Y luego
every-
salen
So-
pájaros.
So it became, those aren't the titles of the songs. They're just whatever is my cue.
Claro. No
so
son los
in-
títulos de las canciones, sino es como el cue, la pista que él ocupa para entrar, la señal. ¿Cierto?
So to start at the top, you can trigger, let me go to here. You can trigger everything. Here's the next. I had a keyboard controller. I can just keep going next, next, next.
Claro, tiene una tecla asignada a anda al siguiente, ¿cierto?
The C sharp will stop everything.
Do sostenido para todo.
Okay, these two you can scroll around.
Re sostenido baja o sube, do sostenido, re sostenido sin que suene.
This is also, I didn't have to touch the computer. I could do everything from the keyboard.
Y lo hace todo desde el teclado, no tiene así que tocar el computador.
The reason, this first one, there was an announcement, blah, 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 and enjoy the pearl. That's my cue. And enjoy the pearl.
Ah,
The reason I don't do this and hit next is because there are two computers running. Because it's a backup. Should I keep going? And
So-
they have to be in sync. They
y
have to
tenían que
be,
estar sincronizados.
if one crashes, I hit a button, you hear the other one. Changes everything. And if before the show starts, I do this, right, and go somewhere else on one computer, now they're at a sync. So if I go to the top and hit next, who knows where the other one is? So
Ah.
I assigned a key, C1, so when I trigger the C1, both computers are in sync. Okay, so let's run 20 seconds of La Pearl.
Vamos a hacer una prueba.
So
20
blah,
segundos.
blah, 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 and enjoy La Pearl. Okay, there's a whole song. Stuff happens. Somebody takes a pearl and throws it in the water. Whoops, come on. I'll do it with next. They threw it in the water.
Entonces hay toda una canción en la primera parte donde dice aquí disfruten la perla, pero después hay un momento en que alguien mete la perla en el agua y en ese es su cue para darle next y que vaya este otro track.
And birds come out.
Y ahora salen los pájaros.
Okay. Then the last bike leaves. There's a scene with motorcycles. The last bike leaves, and when the bike is gone, and it's just on me, I'm watching, the bike's gone.
Es una escena con motocicletas y en el momento que la última motocicleta va saliendo, esa es su cue para pasar a la siguiente parte de música.
Okay, let's go back.
Volvemos atrás.
The last bike leaves. You'll notice when I hit it, it jumps. Watch what happens here.
Cuando la aprieta va a saltar.
We were going in order. All of a sudden,
Salta hasta acá.
it jumps down. The reason is something might happen in the middle of that act. I might have to extend a part, or in the beginning their timing was wrong. I needed some flexibility, so I created all these other ones that I don't really need eventually, because the song actually worked out after 3 years. They could do it without a mistake. So I just jumped to the end. Okay, this is actually, it seems like a mystery, but it's very simple. How
Parece
do
un
you,
misterio, pero es muy
how do you
simple.
make it jump?
¿Cómo haces que
How do you-
salte?
Well, over here, right? This key is assigned. You can see up there. I'm clicking on that note.
Sí.
That scrolls back and forth.
Sí, con do sostenido sube, con re sostenido
Right.
baja sin disparar el audio.
So this whole section, is this mouse showing up when I do this?
Yeah.
This whole section is MIDI control.
Toda esa sección es control MIDI.
So if I click on this, we're on this scene where the last bike leaves. If I click on the MIDI, you can see assigned to the same note are 4 little triggers. So that's all that is when this gets activated, this button here, it's the same as me hitting it. So it's very
Claro.
simple. So it's a pretty simple system if you know it. That's the and Cirque du Soleil expects you to just know this. And I certainly didn't know this in the beginning, but I knew, well, I needed to do this, and I need to have these other options, and how can I make the program do it? And the other guy knew. So between the two of us, we came up with this system.
Yes.
Okay, that's enough of that. Let me show you just what everything is. Why
Es
there's so
suficiente de
much.
eso, ahora vamos a mostrarle qué es cada cosa y por qué hay tanto, por qué hay tanta cosa.
From all this blue, starting like here, all the way to the end,
Desde el azul hasta el final
those are the audio files
son los archivos de audio.
that is getting sent there. At this point, we had 64 channels 64 channels of audio we could send out. Now, this is a permanent show.
Este es un
So-
show permanente.
We could get away with having 64 speakers everywhere. A touring show doesn't do this much, but we could do that. So each one of these things is its own audio file. Let me find a good example here. Strings, okay. Yeah. Okay, so when the last bike leaves, what we were hearing before, I'll solo it.
Está en solo.
Right, and here's the pizzicato. Oh, let me solo.
Y ahí está el pizzicato por separado. El bajo.
Okay, 50, there's actually 25 channels of this.
Son 25 canales de eso.
It looks like there's 50. The reason is there's a channel A assigned to 1 and 2, and a channel B that I made it so there were 2, just so I could overlap. I could have
dice que-
one, right, so there's really, these 2 are really just one channel. I have just made it 2 strips in Ableton it doesn't come out it comes out as one thing. They're both assigned to outputs 1 and 2, and this is 3 and 4, up to 49 and 50, because it's left and right. Everything is still in stereo.
There is one file for the left channel and one file for
No,
the
no,
right.
no. That's the point. They're both doing the same thing.
Los dos están haciendo lo mismo.
It's just to make it so one can start while the other one's fading.
Está
Because
hecho para que uno pueda partir cuando el otro está terminando.
If
Sí.
they're like this, when you go to this one stops. So to make a fade, it's like the birds. When the birds are going, oh no, when the pearl hits the water, whoops, sorry, I have to
Cuando la
find,
perla golpea
there it
el
is.
agua. Ahí está.
When the pearl hits the water, I can trigger the birds.
Puedes superponer los pájaros cuando...
Because wherever that is, I don't know where it is.
no sabe dónde está y quiere tener que encontrarlo para ponerlo en solo. Pero
Somewhere in there, there is a left.
está tratando de encontrar el
together.
otro.
Well, I can't find it. Because this is nuts, as you can see. 'cause
Esto es de loco, como se pueden dar cuenta.
I created this. You go back to the normal, sort of this side. Here is stereo A and stereo B. This is the exact same thing. It's a mix down of the entire thing, but you don't hear it, but I can at least see it. I can see, here's the pearl hits the water.
Puede
There's-
ver el audio de la perla cuando toca el agua.
These little squares are stop buttons.
Y esos pequeños cuadritos son botones de stop.
Okay, if there's a stop button here, add a stop button. This will, if I solo it
Lo va a solear. Si hay un botón de pausa, creo un
and
botón.
trigger it, if I hit the next,
Se va a
it
pausar.
stops. If I get rid of the stop button
Si borra el botón de stop,
and do that again,
es para el audio, no se va a
it
pausar.
doesn't stop. So that's why there's a left or an A and a B.
Y
It's
por
not
eso es que
left
tiene
and
un
right.
A y un B.
So I have this stereo A and B just so I can see what I'm doing. And also, because we're running 50 channel or 25 A and B channels of these wave files, they're all assigned to different outputs. It's the first is 1 and 2, the second is 3 and 4 on this huge matrix
Claro,
of
dice que
64. When I go home at night and I want to play with the program, I can't hear it. I can't hear it unless I reassign all those 50 channels to 1 and 2, because my computer is just 1 and 2. But I want to hear this at home,
Quiere escuchar en
so
la
I
casa.
have this stereo A and stereo B mixed down, just so I can hear it, just so I can be at home, and I just turn these two on, and then that's all I'll hear. I can solo this and just trigger the last bike leaves. Now you're hearing the mix down,
Y ahora estamos escuchando la mezcla.
which isn't used in the show. Okay, let me show you a couple more things.
Dice que nos va a mostrar un par de cositas más de lo que hace.
Okay, this whole section, can you see my mouse? This whole section, this scene A, let me get
Toda
rid of
esta sección, esa de que dice escena A, la que está en rojo,
Scene A, that's the master MIDI, how the show is going to jump around. All that MIDI triggering next, or however I want that to work, all that information is there. In the old show, somebody might get hurt, and so they're not going to do the trapeze act. They're going to put in a juggler. And that's where you make a mistake.
y ahí es cuando uno puede cometer un error.
Because for the last 50, 100 shows, you went into the trapeze act, and all of a sudden, the juggler's coming out. So it's hard to remember when you're in the middle of a show. it's hard to always remember this one stupid detail. Yes, no, trapeze. So I came up with,
Inventó un sistema para esto
it
también.
was one of those things where I was like, duh, why didn't I do this a long time
Sí, ¿por qué
ago?
no se me ocurrió antes?
Say, we had an act called the Wheel of Death. It was one of those, those two wheels and they fly around. So here's the Wheel of Death.
Ahí está la rueda de la
Very
muerte.
pretty. Very pretty song. Okay. And he might be out because he would twist his ankle all the time. So I came up with a very simple, once I finally thought of it, here, no Wheel of Death. At the top of the show, before the show starts, I just turn that channel on. And now, because this is activated, this thing is just going to tell it to jump. It's going to jump to wait. Let me do that again. Let me get rid of this so I can see what I'm doing. Where is he? Okay. The pearl hits the water. Then we play a song, but it's now the No Wheel of Death version. I hit that. And see? We skip over the song, and I didn't have to think about it. And because I would forget. You do forget. You're in the
Porque
middle of doing a show,
Me podría olvidar.
and you can do as many of these. Look at this one. You can put as many of these. This jumps like crazy. No.
Al marcar ese saltó toda esa sección, porque hay otra escena que tampoco está.
The hard part is, this was hard.
Esto fue
Is-
duro.
If there's no, this was the globe of death. The
Este era el
GOD.
globo de la muerte.
It was bikes inside motorcycles in this wheel. Where this became a challenge, and I managed to always do it. I don't know if I always could, but can you turn on both and still have it end up in the right place? Can you have no wheel of death, no globe of death, no bungee straps? Can you make it so this all works together? Because it wasn't just the act was out. There was a bow at the end of the show. If the Wheel of Death guy wasn't there, the bow music was different because he didn't come out and take a bow. So that one button of No Wheel of Death also had to control the bows. But it was doable. You just got to think, where do I need it to go? And what you can do is, if it goes, this is hard to explain. If it goes to
Wait.
Let me, and then I'll be done. I'll be done with this.
Ya termino con esto.
Okay, let's go back to where we were before the Wheel of Death.
Sí, desde antes de la rueda de la muerte.
The pearl
sí.
hits the water again. It was a theme in the show.
Sí, la perla golpea el agua nuevamente.
It's a very, very quiet. And this guy, Antar, kneels. This guy falls to his knees.
Y un tipo se arrodilla, este personaje se
He
arrodilla.
falls to his knees. I trigger. And it goes to the Wheel of Death.
Y va a la rueda de la muerte.
It says dummy. Dummy meant it was going to go automatically. At the end of that song, I didn't need to trigger this lovely Wheel of Death. I didn't need to trigger it.
Sí,
It
sí,
would
claro.
go
Esta era una
automatic. The reason it goes automatically,
la
is
razón por la cual va
because
automáticamente.
when the guy falls to his knees, in that clip is a next. There's a
porque dice
next
que era el
trigger
momento
at
sola.
measure 57.1.2. That you just gotta work that out, but it's possible. So here became a new problem. The song, we still need that song, but we don't want the Wheel of Death. We want to go to another song, the song after. The trouble is, at the end of that song, it's going to go automatically into something, and I don't want it to go automatically. But you can have as many of these things as you want. So what I did was, like this, sounds like this, right? I put in another one that was exactly the same,
Puso otro igual,
only it's the no Wheel of Death version. The only difference, it's exactly the same thing, copy, paste, duplicate. It doesn't have the next, which means then this no Wheel of Death MIDI that's in this channel has to go the one before this music, because it has to choose which of these two identical ones it's going to take.
claro, tiene que ir hacia
Possible.
atrás, se va a ir.
It's very possible.
Dice que es muy
So you just
posible.
got to back up enough until, okay, where can I make it go? What is annoying about this?
Que es muy molesto de esto.
All these, right? This next that you see down here.
Todos estos next de ahí,
If you duplicate one of these tracks, make
du-
another one, they're easy to put in, but as soon as you do that, you have messed up. If it's going to jump over, it now needs another one. And all these things, they all need one more. So that's hard to keep track of. Okay, so real quick,
hace muy rápidamente.
I always conducted with a microphone, and 1, 2, ready, and
Siempre dirigí.
eventually I got rid of the microphone and actually recorded myself and put it in here.
Se grabó y también se dispara con teclas, para no tener que decirlo.
And 1, 2, ready, and.
Partly because it was so loud where I was that when I turned on my mic, the drummer was like, oh, it was too
Dice que
loud.
todo era tan
So that's this channel, is the talkback. This channel is the click. It's still a click. Let me play you the click. I'm the only guy who does this, because I know from talking, nobody does this. I actually make a click that sounds nice. Nobody does this. I know
nadie lo
from
hace,
talking.
nadie se preocupa de esto.
And I play with this all the time. I'm always, one note's too loud, I'll change it.
Si una nota está demasiado fuerte, él lo cambia.
At 10 shows a week, that one note will drive you nuts.
Claro, con
So
10 veces el mismo show a la
it's worth-
semana te va a volver loco escuchando con ese sonido
It's
que te
worth the
molesta.
time. Okay, this channel, time code is, I don't know what it is, I don't know how to make it, but I am responsible for sending it to, it's just a code of numbers. It goes to the lighting department, it goes to the projection, the video projection. They are syncing their stuff to the music. Okay, and all this section here is actual musicians playing. So a musician could be out. I can just could be out. I have recordings of the musicians playing, which is tricky. It's tricky but possible. And Quidam, the old Cirque du Soleil show, was actually the first show to have this, to build this, to have any musician or all of them be out. It was possible back then if you really fudged the technology. Okay,
Okay.
this was all the intro to how do you do the job, how do you get the job, how do you keep the job. So I'll try to make this not go on forever. When you're to do the job,
Para hacer la pega.
there's really like two categories of doing the job.
Hay dos categorías para hacer este
One,
trabajo.
one is what you do when you're not doing the show.
Lo que haces cuando no estás en el show.
You are considered a manager.
Eres
Right? You are
considerado como un
managing,
administrador.
you're managing the band, you're managing the music. Because of this, there's a lot of sort of corporate management bullshit, I'll say, where you have to play this game. You have to deal with it. It's
De alguna
yeah,
manera.
yeah. And the trouble with this is you are not really a manager.
Y que tú no eres realmente un manager.
Because-
Tú eres un músico.
So as Cirque du Soleil became a bigger corporate structure, it became there's more management, and they don't understand the difference between managers and leaders, because there are so few leaders in people in a leadership position where you actually go out and do it. The managers, they organize, they inspire. There's an artistic director in charge of the whole artistic department, the athletes and the band. He inspires, he comforts, but when it's showtime, he sits down. The band leader goes out there and risks making mistakes and is seen by the public. It's a completely different job as far as the band is concerned, as far as the way they view you. So
¿Cierto?
you don't have to do that much management, but you have to pretend you do, because they expect that's what they think your job is. So go along with it. You
Es lo que esperan de ti.
yeah, well, it's
El
just,
rol, asumir el rol.
it just goes easier if you just have meetings, go to meetings. You do have to manage the band.
Si tienes que
You are
administrar la banda,
responsible for the band, and every show has a theme, a style. Every act has a theme and a style. You have to have the music sound like that. So if you have a guitarist who thinks he's Eddie Van Halen, and that's not the trapeze. It's your responsibility to manage his of what he's doing. But
administrarlo.
my advice, though, having done this for 20 years, if you say, I need it to be more lyrical. If you say anything that is, I need it, it doesn't work, because the person spends the rest of his time, is this what Jim wants? Is this what Jim wants? Is this
Dice que en
too
su
lyrical?
experiencia-
So don't tell him, that's what I want, I'm the boss, it goes like this, because it won't work. It takes longer, but watch the show with him, watch a video, get him to want, I see, of course it doesn't fit. And the trapeze is the soloist, is what's going on, and make the musician want to do it, because then the musician is doing it from here, rather than is this what he wants? Because that you need them to feel like they are doing what they want to do. And the other job you have to do when you're not performing is that Ableton stuff. They will come to you and say, Jim, the guy broke his foot, he's out for a month, we need to cut 24 seconds. You have to come up with something that sounds good that's missing 24 seconds. But still, and it's totally on you how you want to do it. Because maybe cutting that exact 24 seconds is not going to work. But if I cut 12 over here and 12 over here, it sounds good, it lines up kind of, and then lines up at the end. But this is a lot of management, or a lot of time. You have to program this thing. You have to program it to do it for a month, because you don't want to lose what you got, and you have to rehearse the band. Okay, so you do those three jobs, the corporate management, pretending you manage the band, and you rebuild the order of the show. Those are what you do when you're not performing. You don't have to repeat.
Yeah.
When you are running the show. You're doing 4 things at once,
Y cuando estás en el show, estás haciendo 4 cosas al mismo
which
tiempo.
any one of these is a full-time job. So it's kind
Y
of
cada una de esas es como una pega de jornada laboral completa.
so.
Y te haces 4.
So I say this in all seriousness. My afternoon nap is the most important time of my day because I got to be awake.
Dice, claro. Su siesta es el momento más importante de la jornada laboral
I gotta
porque
be
tiene que
sh-
estar
at-
despierto. Muy despierto.
11 o'clock at night when you're finishing the second show, you still got to be sharp. So, the 4 things. One is you're playing your instrument,
Uno, tocas tu instrumento.
right? And you have to be as good as everybody else in the band because you're a leader.
Tienes que
And
ser
so-
igual de bueno que todos los de la banda porque además tú eres el líder.
They will do a great job if you are just strong and you just have the attitude of, pardon my French as they say, but don't fuck up my show.
Claro.
They will get in line. It'd be the same as if you were on stage with Sting, right? Sting wouldn't need to inspire you. If he's standing there, it's enough, you know?
Dice, claro.
So you're playing your instrument, you're running the sequencer,
Segundo, estás corriendo todo este programa, toda esta secuencia.
it has gotten simpler with the next. It still can be a full-time job, and on some shows, it is. Some shows have no band. They have a playback. They have no band leader. They have a playback technician. And all he does is that. Okay, number 3, depending on how complicated the composer wrote it, you got to follow a gymnast, an acrobat. You have to know the acrobats. You have to memorize his routine, depending on how complicated it is. Okay, because it could be easy.
Y tienes que saber lo que hace, tienes que aprenderte la rutina.
If the music that a composer wrote is simple enough that you start it, and all you have to do is line up at the end, you can ignore it.
Dice,
You don't,
si la
it doesn't
música
matter
que-
what they do.
Ah.
And the 4th job is, while you're playing, you're listening to the band, because they're still your band. It's on you to have them play well.
Y la
So
cuar-
that's distracting. It takes your brain. Okay. How do you get this job? Used to be, it was who you know. When I first auditioned, they didn't know me, but I found an ad on the internet. I called them up. They said, "Can you be at number 2 something street Friday at 10 in Montreal?" Okay, I did.
Y fue.
I lived in Philadelphia, 12-hour drive, stayed in a hotel.
Manejó 2 horas, estuvo en un hotel
Yeah, and just showed up.
y llegó.
And the person who auditioned me was the original band leader. So it was a lot better than it is now.
Yeah.
Now there's a casting department.
Ahora hay
And
un
the casting
departamento de
department has a lot of power. They also cannot tell who has talent. And I know this from experience because they would send me videos. If I needed a new guitarist, I would get videos with their recommendation of who I should pick. Originally, a guitarist would show up. I'd need a new guitarist. The old one would have stopped. A new one showed up. I didn't know who he was. My artistic director would, "Jim, this guy's he's not good. He's not, don't look at me. I didn't hire him, and I'm not running a school of how to train. Give me the power to audition." So they did. So they would send me then, the casting department. I'll give one example. They sent me, I needed a new guitarist. I had a list of 14 guitarists.
Necesitaba un guitarrista nuevo, le mandaron una lista de 14.
They had made videos, because in the casting department, you can download this audition material. You play along with it. It's a click and a song, the tracks of a song. And it's not a lot of help when you're trying to tell if somebody can play, because you can play with no groove at all and sound pretty rhythmic, playing along with a click, and tracks if the person listening to you can hear the click and the tracks. So I started looking on YouTube for these. I had the names. I would see what else was on YouTube. The number 12 guy, near the bottom of their list, I found him playing a video. He's playing in Paris. He's French. He's playing at a festival. The bass player and the drummer are Steve Vai's bass player and drummer. Amazing. I hired him right away, of
Le
course.
contrató al tiro por eso.
You know, they did the same with the drummer. They sent me 4 videos. The one I chose was number 4. They don't know. They can't really judge the talent. What they look at, I went back to see there's a CV. You fill out your CV. The CV of the number 1 and 2 and 3 said they had played for the Lion King. They had done some kind of theatrical experience. My big point is, if you want to be a Cirque du Soleil band leader, get your CV together, because that's what they're going by. Do some high school musicals. I'll volunteer to help out. Do anything that says music director or any kind of theatrical experience, not just play in a band, because it doesn't really matter how good you are. It matters what your CV says. I wish Ernesto was here, because Ernesto, we all know Ernesto.
Ernesto Calderón, el profe que hace práctica instrumental y
He
dirección.
could get this job tomorrow.
Él podría obtener esta pega
Because
mañana.
his CV shows all sorts of musical direction jobs, and he plays world instruments. He plays accordion. He plays what's it called? The
Shakuhachi,
Kenya, yeah. If Ernesto knew Ableton and could pass that test of assembling it, he'd be in. He'd be
si
in
supiera
instantly.
Ableton y poder hacer estos majamamas de programación.
So a lot of it will take time to get the job. You need a CV that looks good, that has some experience, that they think means you are qualified to do this. Okay, very last.
Yeah.
I only got 4 minutes, so there won't be questions.
4,
Yeah. The very last thing I want to say, how do you keep the job?
¿Cómo te mantienes en la pega?
And the reason I want to say this isn't really about music at all.
Y no tiene que ver con música.
It's because I'm on LinkedIn. We all know what LinkedIn is.
Dice que está en LinkedIn, esta red social, ¿cierto?, donde tú subes tu currículum.
It's all corporate, how to manage your career. And they send me links to blogs or articles about what is your most important skill. And it'll be, this week it's adaptability. And the week before it's transparency. And the week before it's communication.
Dice que
That's only half the story. It's true, but it's only half the story.
eso es
And I
verdad, pero
want
solo la mitad.
you to remember this later in life, no matter what you go into. I'll stay with Cirque du Soleil. There's an artistic director who is your boss if you're the band leader. There's an artistic director, a technical director who's in charge of all the lighting and everything.
Yes.
Your boss is the artistic director. He's the one who's going to fire you. He's the one who's in charge. So, don't think about yourself. Think about him. He is exactly the same as you. He doesn't want to get fired. He wants to keep his job. So if he does fire you, it's because he's doing it to help himself, to make himself look good. So you have to think about this guy. Don't worry about yourself. He has a boss
Él también
who's
tiene
going
un
to
jefe.
decide whether to keep him. So I can think of 3 ways you can make him look good. One is to do your job well.
Uno es hacer tu trabajo bien.
Because when his boss shows up, how does the show sound and look? So you got to do your job well. That's
porque después
obvious.
aparece-
Second thing is be easy to work with.
Sé fácil para trabajar. O sea, que
Don't-
sea fácil trabajar contigo.
Don't take up any of his time, because this poor guy, he has to manage, I'll say 4 things. He's got to manage the band. He has to manage maybe 50 acrobats. Some are Russian and some are Chinese, and it's just,
De distintas nacionalidades, ruso, chino.
he has to manage the wardrobe department even, which is not that simple, because they all want to make beautiful costumes. The truth is, they're doing the laundry. 6 hours a day they're doing laundry because of the show. And he has to manage the physio department.
El departamento fisio como de
Yeah.
rehabilitación, los kines, todo
If
eso.
somebody breaks their foot, the physio says that person is out. He's got to deal with that. So he has an impossible job.
Tiene un trabajo imposible.
The last thing he needs is for you to be taking up his time and for the band to be complaining about you. You just want this to be the easiest. He never has to think about what you're doing or you're complaining or you just don't take his time. So he can focus, so he can make himself look good to his boss. But there's one more thing you have to do.
Y hay una cuarta,
For
la
this
cuarta
poor,
cosa.
this poor guy. You have, even though you're going to take up no time, you have to be communicative. Because his boss is going to say, in the weekly Zoom meeting, how is the band doing? And how's the band leader? And he has to be able to say, he's doing well. The band is happy. They've been working on something. Yeah, he can't just say, actually, I don't know. It's a bit of a waste of your time, but you stick your head in his door and say, I changed the 8 bars of this thing and it sounds better, it matches the lighting, and I just want you to know, and you probably can't hear the difference, but you let him know.
Ok, cool. Estamos ok.
Yeah.
Sí.
I know, it's just corporate, but this is true this would be true if you were in a bar band. There's a manager and a club owner. It doesn't matter how good your band is, it's whether the manager will look good to the bar owner if he hires you. And I'm only telling you this because LinkedIn doesn't say, I just haven't read it anywhere. Okay? Okay. Woo! Thank you. It's been fun. I could talk about myself all day.
Primero que nada, felicitarlo por su trabajo que hacen, maravilloso lo encuentro.
He wants to congratulate you for your work.
Yeah, well,
first.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mi pregunta, bueno, en base a lo que nos comentó recién en toda esta charla, tu trabajo, yo en mi vida he ido a un show de Cirque du Soleil. Mi mamá fascinada cuando estaban los anuncios en la tele.
He has never gone to a Cirque du Soleil show, but her mom loves it. He hasn't been to a show, but her mom loves Cirque du Soleil.
Pero me di como que me hago la idea de que básicamente todo lo que tiene que ver con la música y el show que se hace ahí es, como decía, con los triggers, ¿no es cierto?, manipulándola en directo con estos teclados donde cada tecla tiene una acción. Mi pregunta es que yo he visto que en algunos circos convencionales como que los trapecistas, los payasos se tratan como una familia. ¿Por qué Cirque du Soleil no podría hacer, en vez de hacer esto de como de samplear cada sonido para cada show, traer músicos, así como en directo, tocar así en vivo y juntar como los músicos como parte de la familia del circo también?
Entiendo. Yeah. What he's saying is what you see like in circus culture, where like the cast is like kind of a family, the smaller circles. What happens in Cirque du Soleil that with the musicians, you are thinking more like an optimization in sampling and doing all this stuff. Instead, why they don't treat the musicians like a family, as you see in traditional circus with the artists, and it's all like, we can sample this, I can sample that, I can use only 3-4 musicians, you know?
Right, but it's still, so then it's 3 or 4 musicians. It's still a family. It doesn't change the feeling. It A, doesn't change the feeling, and B, I can create a family because it's not me who decided to only use 3 musicians and a lot of tracks. I build a band with whatever they ask me to do. You can have 3 musicians. I can build a nice warm band with 3 musicians. So it doesn't, this thing doesn't have a personality that gets in the way of the warmth, the family of 3 musicians. My last show only had 3.
El camino eso.
And let me add to that. The reason I create a nice click, a click that sounds good, is because we, in our headphones, we have our own mix. we can get rid of the tracks. We can make them very quiet and listen to each other. So
Dice
it's
que
just a
también.
click. It's a little tiny bit of the tracks, just so we know it's still working. But it's really the click and 3 musicians. And everybody has a microphone on stage.
Todos
We
tienen un
can-
micrófono también
We can all talk to each
y se
other.
hablan.
And it's normal if you watch the band in a Cirque du Soleil show and keep your eyes on them, serious song is going by, and all of a sudden they're all laughing. Some joke happened. They were talking.
Bien.
Yeah, yeah.
Bien. Cortito ahí la última pregunta para que podamos pasar a la siguiente charla. ¿Sí?
Hola.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
La pregunta es, que dejó muy claro que para conseguir un trabajo como músico, así en general, hay que tener un buen currículum, pero mi pregunta es, ¿cómo empiezas obteniendo un trabajo sin nada de currículum?
Dice, he says that although you have been very clear to state that to get a job like this you need a really good CV, how do you start? How do you get like your first jobs without having that CV?
Uh-huh. Well, you won't. You need the CV. But you can do things like it. You can do high school, like I said, high school musicals.
Yeah.
Go do that for free. Let people know that you're available to help out. And eventually somebody will say, can you come? We're doing a little program over here. We need somebody to play the piano and teach the guitarist how to play along with you. Something that you can put on your CV that says musical director, even if it was you and a teenage guitarist.
Muchas gracias. Es que estaba esa paradoja. Pero bueno.
Sí, le quería preguntar. Sí,
He's allowed
El jefe,
Sí,
tengo que hacer
sí.
que el jefe se vea bien.
No,
Así
no,
que
no.
una pregunta más.
sí. Oye, la última. No, la penúltima. Si sabe cuánto tiempo se demoran en crear la música, componer la música. Yo sé que eres el director y le dan una música, le dan
Claro.
unos músicos y todo eso, y le dan un show, pero si sabe cuánto demora ese proceso, quién lo hace y quién decide si la música está lista.
How long does it take for a Cirque du Soleil composer to compose the music from when it starts, when the artistic director, I think, maybe said, okay, it's good? How long does this process take?
Nothing. They do it. It's such a high pressure situation. He just sits in his room. Nowadays, it's digital performer. You know the program? Digital.
software
It's just
digital
writing tracks. He'll just write tracks, and the next day, the person directing the show can hear the music and say, yeah, that works, or it's too much. It's being done instantly. Some composers have a whole lot of stuff they can draw from. They compose, and when I need that kind of thing, they already have it. But there's no time given to the composer. No, like, okay, he's going to compose. We'll be back in a week. It's way too expensive. The amount of people when you are creating a show, the amount of people that get paid more than the performers, the actual creators. It's an expensive group to have, so that composer's got to do it now. And then he does it. I've seen both composers I worked with, both different shows, just do it. Just like 8 bars, and beautiful. But they're doing it in a program like Digital Performer.
Y lo hacen en un programa como Digital Performer.
It's not like they compose and then record. It just happens in that enough that you can create the show. Then I take the music and I may erase a part and have a guitar play that part. I can change the music. The music director has a lot of power. It's not like the composer, it's locked in stone. He composes, they create the show, and he's done. Which is the responsibility. I'm not allowed to sit there on stage and be bored. It won't work.
No
The
funciona.
performance of the show won't work. So if any part of the music is boring, I got to change it. So I did
Claro. Y lo hizo.
a lot.
Un montón. Muchas gracias, Jim.
Oh, he's
Una,
done.
sí.
He's
Si en el programa ocupa solo nota on para
If
Para-
you use only on
note
notes,
on.
in your
What?
note on, MIDI, MIDI note on, if you only use note on your software or note off,
It's note
Also?
off,
on and off.
but any MIDI key is note on, note off.
But if you're using the off to control something or
No.
just the on? No, solo
No.
ocupa el on para controlar, no el off.
No, but
No, pero
when I showed you all those little bits that are next, I don't put them at the first bar. I put them at the second beat, so I have time to let go. Because if they start going and I lift, they go off. That's pretty technical.
¿Le puedo preguntar directamente?
si hablas inglés, sí, pues dale. Pero igual yo tendría que traducir tu pregunta para el resto. Dale.
Well, hello, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'll be quick because I got a little bit later to this talk, but I was very curious about when you said you had to be told to do something without even knowing how to do it. And
Considerando que tienes que hacer, dijo que tenías que, se te espera que puedas hacer algo, aunque ni siquiera sepas cómo se tiene que hacer, cómo se hace.
and how you have to deal with frustration and some of those feelings. And what could you say, like, to us as little composers that have lack of support, even though it's like of people of even the country, and resources, because we dream big, just like Cirque du Soleil on other things, but we don't have the support and we have to deal very much with the emotions. So what you could say about it on
Okay.
advices?
Okay, well that's two kind of separate questions. When I built this system, when I came up with it, I wasn't being told, you have to do this even though you don't know what you're doing, you have to do it. It was, here's the new plan, we're getting rid of everything. Can you and this guy figure something? Can you make it work? I could have easily gone to them and said, I tried, it doesn't work. I couldn't.
Sí, claro que con la
I
primera vez
need
que le
some help. I need somebody else to come in. I can't make it work. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the freedom they gave me. It was
Aprecia la
here's
libertad
the
que le
guy, here's a guy here to help you. Can you do it?
Claro,
Yeah,
aprecia la
okay,
libertad y que le
that was
ofrecieron a
fine.
alguien que lo ayudara,
It
a ver si lo podían
wasn't you
resolver.
have to do it. It was can you do it? And
¿Puedes hacerlo?
I
No
could.
tienes que hacerlo.
That's the only problem now is I could. So now that's the standard. We
Claro.
expect a guy who can.
Y dice que
That's not
se...
fair. Right.
Claro,
Yeah, yeah,
no
yeah,
justo,
yeah,
pero
yeah.
sí es, claro.
But as far as composing and resources, I don't have a lot. I don't know how the composers get the job other than doing smaller compositions, doing movie scores. I know that the last one I worked with was doing, you can find movies, real crappy movies that he has done the music for, but at least he's
He did
yeah,
it.
he did it. I personally don't have much experience submitting compositions. I've always been a performer.
Dice,
It's
no
always
te-
been about me. You are hiring me, not you're hiring something I've created. So I'm sorry, but I don't really have any words of inspiration for budding
Lamentablemente entonces no
composers,
tiene esa
'cause I don't know
palabra de
I don't
inspiración.
know how they do it.
No sabe cómo se hace, no sé,
Yeah.
no sé cómo lo hago. ¿Ok? Ok.
Bueno, quería preguntar en específico qué pasa si es que aquel tipo que controla todo,
Ajá.
básicamente dentro de este show, en cuanto a la música, ¿cómo hacen cuando no está?
What do they do when this guy that does these four important things, you,
Me,
It's not there.
I train a assistant, a backup band leader. Somebody else in the band can do it. Which is why, you remember the column on the left, it just said, Pearl hits water, last bike leaves, birds. Yeah, so he
Yeah.
can just read that and go, okay, I'll wait till Pearl hits the water.
Y es por eso también que las
And that is my responsibility to make sure he can do it.
es
he
su
or she
responsabilidad
can-
que él lo pueda hacer.
Hello,
Hello.
Hey.
nice to meet you. I really appreciate all the advice that you give in this
Thing.
and my question is about the teamwork in the composition of all those the circus. I mean
The teamwork?
the teamwork.
Yeah. About teamwork,
Me
yeah.
refiero a que igual debe haber una complejidad entre el jefe y el compositor, o sea, me refiero al instrumentista, y entonces como algo que puede hacer como algún consejo en ese sentido de haciendo un performance así.
What advice do you have in teamwork? Like the teamwork between you being the musical conductor and the musicians. There has to be, he says, like some kind of teamwork involved.
Well,
And how is that? What advice
mean,
could you give about that?
After the show, go to the bar as a group.
Vayan a tomarse un copete al bar después.
You know,
Sí.
hang out, get high,
Júntense.
and jam. You know, I mean,
Toquen, júntense, huélense.
yeah, be a regular guy. Don't be their boss.
No sea su jefe, sea alguien más.
I got away with doing this. I don't know if everybody does. There are evaluations you write. I wouldn't write an evaluation. I said there. Then I become too much of the boss. And if I'm too much of the boss, then whoever's left will pick a new boss to represent them to the boss. It doesn't work. I have to be one of the guys. So I had a system of the artistic director wrote the evaluation. If I thought it wasn't fair, I said so. If I thought it was criticizing wrong, I said so. If I thought it was praising wrong, I let it go. Yeah, so just be one of the, it's up to you. It's on the band leader to create the tension or to create the relaxed mood. And of course you want it to be relaxed.
Claro, depende de ti hacerlo tenso, hacerlo relajado, y seguro quieres que todos estén
Hang
relajados.
out and jam after.
Improvisen,
Get high and
júntense,
jam.
vuélense y tóquense unos temas. Thank you very much. Roberto has a present for you.
Oh, what's this? Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Why Limache?
Why in Limache? Because my wife's family lived in Santiago and they have all moved to Limache. Everybody in Santiago is moving to Limache.
Porque la familia de su esposa era de Santiago, se cambiaron a Limache y parece que todo el mundo de Santiago se está yendo a vivir a Limache.
Yeah.
La pandemia, claro. Gracias. Les pedimos desocupar un poquito para airear y también instalar lo de...